and it is my duty, because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are, and we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
All right, welcome to Cows in the Field. This is our first episode. We're doing this for ourselves, for no one else.
For posterity's sake.
For posterity's sake. We haven't, we recorded one thing before, which was Widows, which we did like almost a year ago.
I think so.
Yeah, it must have been. But now that we are quarantined because of COVID-19, we are doing what anyone does when they're quarantined, which is listen to podcasts and start their own podcast.
Yep.
Because how hard could it be?
Yeah, we got this.
We got this.
We're gonna have like a listener, maybe.
Yeah. Which of us will be the listener?
I'm not listening to this after we do it.
That's me. I'll be listening. All right. So last night we watched the movie The Departed by Martin Scorsese, 2006. This movie feels very 2006.
Say more about that.
Yeah. There's an extensive prelude to the main plot of the movie where like many homophobic, racial, and gendered slurs are used.
Just in rapid fire succession.
And it doesn't age well.
No, when in the first 5 minutes, when Jack Nicholson's character drops the N-word pretty casually, I felt it in my body.
Yeah, you're like, that's what this movie's going to be. Okay. It's funny because if you made this movie today, I don't think you would be doing that much of that. Or it would be at least done with more intentionality. It just felt like it was just like, that's what you do to you just put stupid slurs in the movie. So one thing I want to ask you about, just to get your perspective on, is the way I think of this movie is that it's a movie about masculinity and the sort of the inability to come to terms with your sort of fragility and your own mortality, and that sort of fear that comes with losing control of your your manhood or whatever, because again and again the two main characters played by Leo and Damon are pitted against each other, even unwittingly and unknowingly, that in the way that Leo embodies a kind of tortured but confident masculinity, and Damon embodies this sort of easy but ultimately insecure and weak sort of person who's just completely overmatched, but also sort of knows it, right? Knows that like he is a fraud, right? And that his whole life is based on a fraud. And even though it's Leo's character who is constantly lying, right? I mean, they're both lying, but Leo is the one who confronts it more directly and says I have to lie all the time, and like this is,
It hurts.
it hurts, and exactly, and it's really Damon who is the one who's like consumed by it, right? He like loses himself in the process, and that seems to play out in, for instance, among many other things, it plays out in like his like lack of any libido, right? Like he has no, because he's lying, right, to everyone, and that sort of catches up with him physically. But again, this movie, there's all these like men posturing, punching each other, and like saying, crass things to one another.
Yep.
It seems like that is a big part of it, but I don't know. I'm curious, as an outsider, as not a man.
It's not a man.
Does it?
Thank you so much for noticing. No, what was your question?
Well, I don't know. I'm curious what your perspective is on that. Like, because sometimes it's interesting to sort of look at this stuff from the outside, and like, look at these cultural things that are, not issues like you've had to deal with or anything like that, but like what is it, how does that look to you?
I think you're right. I don't know that I have anything more to add to that, or that I have a different perspective as a woman. I mean, I think that's partly to why I'm not a huge Scorsese fan, is so many of his movies are about masculinity. Just like Tarantino, so many movies are about masculinity, and that's not a bad thing, like write what you know. But it's hard for me to click into what is considered so cool about Scorsese or cool about Tarantino, which is a lot of the masculine posturing.
But I guess what I was thinking this time, and this I thought was the most interesting thing about the movie, is that it's a kind of inversion of that. So it takes all these things, all this posturing and, puffing up their tail feathers, so to speak, and really just shows how it's all built on a kind of facade of self-deception and that sort of thing. Like and nowhere is this clear except in the scene where the contrast between the first scene where Matt Damon meets Vera Farmiga's character, and he's so calm and collected and cool and flirtatious, and she's so intrigued by him, and also the dinner, they go out to dinner, and he knows what Freud said about the Irish and all this stuff. But then contrast that with basically every other scene they have together, like where they're so distant from one another, and she has so many doubts, and he is so emotionally disconnected from her and unable to be, confident and comfortable in his own skin, even with her. Like he sort of knows. And so I do think, like, in a way, this movie, it reads on a surface level like all this cool masculinity stuff.
Right. But this is the one you actually see the fragility of it.
Yeah, I feel like it's all just...
You wouldn't see that in a Tarantino movie.
I mean, maybe, but I think not. I don't know. I have to think about that. But yeah, it does feel a lot more like he's trying to deconstruct that a little bit. Like all these men screaming at each other, talking about like that soliloquy that Baldwin gives on the driving range about getting married, and basically why it's important to get married, because it basically keeps up the pretense that you're not gay, and that and that somebody,
your penis works.
Yeah, and that somebody likes you, and that like these are all good things for getting ahead. Yeah, it does feel like very like it's all sort of right there, that he wants you to be thinking about this. And in a way, the only character who truly seems to be content and comfortable with himself is Martin Sheen's character, the captain. He's the only one who doesn't engage in, he's a kind of pure soul in this environment of a bunch of men running around posturing.
Yep. Yeah. And you only get a tiny glimpse of his home life, but it seems quite calm and sweet.
Yeah, he seems
his
like
wife leaves him supper, when he gets home late, and he's got a son studying law or studying at Northwestern or something like that. Yeah. But you get the sense that, like, it's sort of surprising he hasn't died yet, because he's not going to make it in this like crazy, hyper masculine, hyper violent environment that he's in.
I do think that Scorsese, the past, I haven't given him maybe enough credit for thinking about these sorts of themes, and some of the things that I've read and listened to him talk about film and stuff recently have led me to think that, I mean, he is as articulate as many critics in what he likes about movies and how he what things he cares about with film, and what I think he thinks is important and powerful about the medium of film. And so I was sort of, with that in mind, I was watching the movie and thinking, what are the things under the surface? Like, he, of course, this isn't his script, it's not his story, but he is, I think, interested in these things, exploring these themes sort of within that structure. I've seen Infernal Affairs, I guess, but I don't remember.
Does it have, it's so tight, does it have space for themes, or was it just sort of a straight down the line action movie?
I don't totally remember. I mean,
Scorsese
I think,
adding that as his flavor.
I think Scorsese is definitely dialing it up. But I think some of that stuff is in there. The contrast between the Damon and the Leo characters is definitely there, in the same way, of the one being very insecure and the other being very calm and cool about everything, you know. But I think my sense is, I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch Infernal Affairs, but my sense is that Scorsese is really sort of picking up on that and pushing it a little bit further. I mean, the other character which we haven't talked about that has this, I think, as well, is Jack Nicholson's character, the ultimate bad guy, Castillo. And, you know, his character is one which, you know, it's repeededly said again and again that he doesn't need to be doing this. Like, people are always like, hey, like, why are you you're an old man. Like, you should just chill out. And why are you going to the drug deal and stuff? Like, why are you so actively involved in all this? And, again, I think it's because one answer is that he just, you know, doesn't know anything else, but it's clear he doesn't need the money. And I think it's just because it's like the only way he could feel alive. Like it's sort of, he's sort of play acting in a weird way as a mob boss, and he gets to sort of play around and consequence free, because we know he's a get out of jail free card. And so he just kind of plays around, and that's it. It's for him, it's just this sort of play thing, which allows him to sort of attain a feeling of power and, you know, masculinity and that sort of thing. I mean, he himself admits, like, he is engaged with various trysts with women half his age, but he himself admits, like, he's basically impotent. Like, it's not about sex for him. It's about, like, you know, and it's not about intimacy. It's just about power, right? It's just about, like, being able to, like, control these people and, you know, get them to do what he wants or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it must be something about him feeling alive, because I was thinking about how all three of those main men are feeling increasingly panicked throughout the movie. You know, that tension builds up for all three of them, because Nicholson's consumed by this rat in his midst, and they're all like, the net is kind of closing in on all of them, except for that, like, Nicholson can walk away in a way that Sullivan can't. It'd be pretty hard for him to, I think, at this point. And Leonardo DiCaprio, like, his character really can't get out of this. He's really stuck in the bed that he made for himself and the deal that he made with McQueen. And so they're all trapped, but Nicholson is sort of trapped by his own design. I think in a way, like, they're playing with their own money and he's playing with house money, right? Like, he doesn't it's consequence free for him. But the stakes are different. So that's one theme. I think the other theme that I was thinking about was this theme of living. Well, let me see what I wrote here. Yeah, you really prepared for this in a way that I didn't. I feel a little embarrassed.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, sorry, I was thinking
your faith.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like this idea of, and I think it's connected to the masculinity thing, but the idea of being lost, and these are young men who lack father figures, and they're seeking out men in particular to serve as their sort of authority figures or whatever, mentors, right? And so you have with Damon, you see that early scene where he is sort of seduced to the dark side, so to speak, by Nicholson because of the money and the power that he wields over the people in the store. And he's like, I'm in, like, he's into it. He likes that. And then with Leo, he has no father figure because his dad has died, right? And he kind of lived between two worlds, right? The straight life, and then his uncle, I guess, who was more of a gangster.
Uncle Jackie.
And so, you know, he kind of went between these two worlds, And rather than try to choose between the two worlds, it's like by becoming a cop, in a way, he sort of let that make his choice for him, right? Like, I think he closes the door to both worlds in a way by being a cop, which allows him to have one foot in both worlds, so to speak, right? And in particular, he becomes an undercover cop, right? So he has to. There's this, like, he basically plays out his adolescence yet again. But for him, this father figure is Martin Sheen, right? The guy who has, like, taken him in and under his wing and is, like, counseling him and, grooming him in his role as an undercover cop. And but I think what's interesting is, I think for Scorsese, both are, I think, false prophets, in the sense that I think that Nicholson's character is basically the devil, right? He's framed as such in many cases, and I think he just lies constantly. He's full of lies and deceit, and he uses people and then just discards them as he sees fit. And whereas Martin Sheen's character is not God, right? He's also a false prophet, because he's just like a bureaucrat, right? He's someone whose hands are just as tied as anyone else's in the system. So it's like Leo makes his bed with the bureaucrat, and that really doesn't go well for him either, because the system is designed to just function with or without these guys. Like, these guys are just cogs, they're replaceable. And so I think for Scorsese, both are false prophets, right? I think that's an important aspect of, like, of the movie, of theme of the movie, that these guys grow up looking for some kind of salvation and guidance, and they look in the wrong places. They look in the devil and evil, and they look in, like, institutional structures, which isn't going to help.
Right. Which are, like, you're right. People are replaceable, and they're also being not entirely truthful with Leonardo DiCaprio. There are people that they're secrets that they're keeping from him. They're keeping him in the dark. They're, maybe there was another undercover cop in his midst and he didn't even know that. They didn't let him in on that secret, so he's not really a father figure in the way that Leonardo DiCaprio wants him to be.
But I think what's interesting is that both are father figures in a certain traditional sense, in that your father doesn't tell you everything, right? You're kept in the dark as a child.
He's not a child; he's a grown man.
Well, look, but I mean, that's the analogy.
But they're treating him like a child.
Yeah, these guys are children to these men who sort of are puppet masters, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah. And Jack Nicholson even calls him son and calls him dad.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So those were the themes I was sort of thinking about when I was watching it, and it made me appreciate the movie more. And I think that some of that is really Scorsese's influence. So I have to give him credit for that. I think that's...
And tied to the masculinity themes are the classic Michael Mann theme of, the impossibility of having a personal life and also being really good at the thing that you do and that consumes you. So maybe these Matt Damon's relationship with Vera Farmiga is broken partly because of his constant need to posture masculinity, and he doesn't ever allow himself to open up to her, even though she is a therapist. She never gets in, and he jokes about that because he's Irish, so he's just like, good luck with that. But it may also just be too because there's no space for intimacy or honesty in the world that he's built himself, which is based on violence, masculinity, and lies.
Yeah, I mean, I think deception first and foremost. I think because he wants, he wants a straight life ultimately, but his straight life is built completely on top of an edifice of deception. And I think that is, at the end of the day, I think Scorsese is sort of saying, like, you have to first start by being truthful with yourself, and that you have to be open and honest with yourself and with your loved ones, and otherwise it's just not going to work. And you can put your faith in whatever, but you have to sort of have your own, you have to sort of make these choices for yourself and be honest with yourself. And that's what I think none of the in a way none of the characters can. I mean, definitely not Damon, but I think to a certain
And Vera
extent,
Farmiga's not doing it either. She's consciously choosing somebody she knows that relationship's
she's constantly lying to
Yeah.
herself.
Yep.
Yeah, of course. No, of course. I mean, I guess I wonder if the DiCaprio character is better in this regard, but I don't know. I think, yeah, I think he's like more conflicted about he's more upfront and more conflicted about the lies that he has to live.
Mm-hmm.
And, but he doesn't, I mean, he does make the choice. I mean, one issue that you had with the movie, I mean, you mentioned to me last night, is that you felt like his motivations as a character were somewhat thin.
He put himself through a lot, and it's eating him up more than other characters are at least admitting. Here's a real edge of desperation to him the entire movie, and he's self-medicating, and I don't know why he did it. I don't totally know why. I mean, you see the scene where they explain to him his own like upbringing, and you know that he has nobody, but what drives him to go through this hell because he cares about bringing down organized crime? I didn't think so.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, why would you be like, yes, I'm going to go to jail for a little bit, and then I'm going to like live this duplicitous life where I'm constantly worried I'm going to be found out and murdered? For what? Probably not a lot of money. He's getting paid. He's going to get some bonus right at the end. We know that, but it can't be that much money.
Yeah, it's not for money. It's
no, it's definitely not.
That's the thing that's interesting about this movie. Well, I mean, I guess Damon is motivated by money because he's motivated to appear more secure and more of a straight man than he is or whatever. But yeah, none of the characters seem to be otherwise motivated for money at the end of the day, right? And definitely DiCaprio, yeah, his motivations are I think somewhat opaque, which I mean, the way I read it is that it's like he doesn't know anything else. It's like he's just been playing this two-faced game his whole life, and so this is just the natural next step of the game. And
he gets offered to do it professionally.
Yeah,
he's
it's
like,
just
all
sort
right,
of like,
I know how to
fine.
do that.
yeah, it's sort of like what I'm best at or something.
Yeah.
right? So
And he knows that they're right when they're like, you don't really truly want to be a state cop.
yeah, I mean, he himself, when he's talking to Farmiga in their therapy session, he's explaining early on in that conversation, like he's like, my heart is pounding and my hand is steady, right? He's like, I never shake. And because he knows he's good at it. He knows, even though he is conflicted about the lies, he knows he's really good at lying, right? Both of them are really good at lying. They both brag almost about how good at keeping things stamped down and repressed, right? And I mean, I think one theme I was reading about just a little bit when I was reading Letterboxd reviews is that there is this kind of like latent homoeroticism between them, almost like they are like repressed in a way repressed gay men who are are trying to live this life of a lie, right? And they haven't.
I get that more from Damon than from Leo. But that's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, it's another layer of
Yeah.
like the deception that that a man will go, or whatever, a person, doesn't matter if they're men or women, will go to live sort of in the light, so to speak, society's light.
Right. Or in the closet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's I guess what I mean by
Yeah.
light is like
Yeah.
live sort of in the good graces of
Right.
of
Yeah, he wants to
hetero
have like
society.
nice apartment in Beacon Hill because he says you'll be you'll be middle class by Tuesday.
no upper class.
Upper class, right? Not middle class. Yeah, upper class by Tuesday.
I mean, I guess there's another theme intertwining, which is the theme of ratting someone out, right? And about like informing on, and of course that is like a direct violation of trust. So there's this idea that when you're lying to someone, you are exploiting their trust because they believe you, and you're gonna go and betray that trust. And so that is an element. I mean, they're lying to themselves, but they're also lying to everyone around them, and that those betrayals come home to roost, right? Because they are all found out, basically. even though Damon is not found out, by, he ultimately wins at the end of the day. He's killed by Dignan. So like, they all, I mean, and Farmiga knows. I mean, that's what's kind of curious is that why doesn't she just basically like rat him out? Anyway, but whatever. He's killed before he can do anything, Mark Wahlberg kills him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it all comes home to roost, but yeah, they are deceiving, right? Ratting, this idea of being a rat. Of course, the movie ends with the CGI rat on the railing,
which I laughed out loud in when I first saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, it's very on the nose. But again, the thought is that, he's there. The idea of ratting out someone is this constant. It's like, in a weird way, it's like the only thing that people in power are. It's like a way for people not in power to have power over people in power. Mm-hmm. Something like that, right? Like, it's like these two guys are not in positions of power, but yet they have power over those in power. Like, Damon can fuck up those guys' investigations, and he continually does. He's constantly just like throwing them off the scent. And Leo can destroy Jack Nicholson, right? He's constantly feeding them tips on. So it's like these guys who are effectively powerless, they do have the ability to sort of overthrow their father figures, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And but they have to, in order to do that, they have to exploit the trust. So
right,
yeah,
right, and that makes Jack Nicholson a little bit crazy. But then he's the ultimate rat because he's also an FBI rat.
Right. He knows better than some. Anyway, well, what would you give this movie rating wise? Five is the max. That's the Letterboxd rating. I gave it 3.
I'm gonna give it 3.5.
Okay, you liked it more than me?
Yeah, I had fun last night. Okay. I had fun rewatching it. It did not dazzle me the way I thought it did when I saw it the first time, or maybe this is the third time I've seen it. I'm not sure. I know we've watched it once before. I know I saw it in theater, so it's at least the third time. Maybe it's the fourth time. But it didn't work for me as it had in previous years. I still think I had a lot of fun in it. I thought the performances are really good. I think in particular Leonardo DiCaprio is really amazing in it. And I don't know, like, what I was really enjoying was some of the sillier stuff this time around. Like, yeah. I really, just how many animal prints could we put Jack Nicholson in? Phenomenal. And even though that scene there was no point to it, when Jack Nicholson is waving around a severed hand, like, I was laughing. I thought it was fun. It's kind of campy at times. It's really over the top.
It's Jack Nicholson. Who's your favorite character in the movie?
My favorite character? I mean, maybe it's just I've got a Leo thing. I didn't think I did, but I really like his character quite a lot. His vulnerability and his desperation. You just see it in his eyes the whole movie that he's just
there's that line from Vera Farmiga. She's like, that vulnerability you're giving off is kind of freaking me out.
Yeah, it's freaking me out too the entire movie, where I'm just like, oh, honey, like, this is a lot. Like, you need to take a bath. Like, this is... I worry for you.
So do you think, but didn't you, that's just, maybe you're thinking this is his best performance.
It might be. What did I say it was before?
I don't know. I can't remember. I said it was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I think I might actually, it's tops for me for sure. Mm-hmm. I think it's really good. Things I don't like about it, the needle drops. How many times did they play that same Rolling Stones song?
Yeah, they did do it a couple times.
Like, 4 times. And is it Flogging Molly or is it Dropkick Murphys?
Oh,
one of the two. I don't need it.
Yeah. I like the music. I don't know. I think I like Scorsese's sort of
Rolling Stones vibes.
Yeah, he knows how to direct with pace and and in sort of forward momentum, and the music is important for that. And I like that the music just ends abruptly most of the time. That's yeah.
I think he has a magic trick, Scorsese, at least with Irishman, where I could sort of be like, this movie is bloated, or there's this move scene is perhaps unnecessary, and yet I'm not bored. Like, I can sort of like meta notice that like this is going on for a while and not, but I don't feel that it drags.
Yeah.
Just he keeps it, even though there are, you know, maybe 50 too many scenes, he keeps them snappy and he keeps them, he keeps it moving.
Yeah, that's a really astute observation about Scorsese, which is that it's like scene to scene, it's great because every scene he has this momentum to it, and it's often written and edited really well, and the way, you know, he shoots it so that it's kinetic, right?
Yeah.
But then
editing
there's
is
just
really
too
fast.
many scenes.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's the thing, is that by the end you're like, man, I just feel like I've been running constantly, you know? And it's like I'm exhausted, and I would wish this movie would have had fewer scenes. But then if you're asking me like which scene do you cut, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
like that scene with him in the severed hand is a good example, because I know that Leonardo DiCaprio comes to his house to talk about something. I think that's right when he's like around when he's getting hired. I don't remember what they talked about. It certainly was not critical to the plot in any way, shape, or form. But that was like one of the funnier scenes, I thought. Just him waving around that hand. It was a lot of fun. It could have been cut.
Well, that's the thing is I think you need, as you know, the movies I like the most are ones that aren't so heavy on plot that like they can only do plot stuff, but they actually are, you know, adding some spice into the mix, and you know, and so scenes like that are important for getting a little spice, but it's like
you gotta find a balance.
You gotta find a balance, and I don't know. This is a movie where I literally have no idea what to cut, but you could easily, I think, cut 25 minutes and the movie is
I think you cut the first 15.
Yeah, that could be it. I don't know.
I think you just cut the Jack Nicholson in shadow talking about how powerful he is.
It's very important to understanding the Damon character, and then you need the training montage and stuff. I think some of
the training montage is fun.
The training montage is straight out of Infernal Affairs, so that's like, you know, direct lift.
I like that. I just didn't like. I felt he was taking his time a little bit with Jack Nicholson in the very beginning, talking about how powerful he is.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Cows in the Field.
That was an abrupt ending.
Have no idea. Well, we gotta watch Birdcage tonight, so we have no idea if this is gonna be interesting. It's probably gonna require a lot of editing, and we're gonna do more of these if we have time. But that's we'll see.
You know,
I mean, if the coronavirus persists for a year, we'll produce like a whole slate.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
If I abandoned this project, I would be a man without dreams. It's not only my dreams. My belief is that all these dreams are yours as well. And the only distinction between me and you is that I can articulate them.